Hey everybody, today I'm going to be talking about the 1937 animated movie Snow White and the Seven Dwarves.
Want to know a secret? Promise not to tell? We are standing by a wishing well.
It was Disney's first feature-length film, and it's just one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in my life. On one hand, it has brilliant, influential animation and some really catchy songs. But on the other, the movie doesn't hold together too well. The main character is this passive, domestic weirdo who doesn't have a personality besides cleaning and wanting to date more. The dwarves are totally irrelevant to everything the plot's trying to do. There's a song about hand washing in there. I don't know. And considering all that weirdness, it's really easy to just shrug and say, let's just appreciate the movie for what it is, a really interesting aesthetic experience, no more, no less. And honestly, I think that's a totally valid way of appreciating the movie. Snow White is a piece of escapist entertainment, and not every media experience we have has to be a big deal. But in this video, I want to try to take on the weirdness of Snow White, to look through the film and its characters closely and see if we can understand what it's trying to do on a thematic and emotional level.
Now that I've found you, hear what I have to say.
I'm gonna start by taking you through Snow White's most important theme, and that's that there are certain roles that people should fill, and that these roles sort of have a life of their own. Where today's Disney movies make the claim that our identities are in our own hands,
I don't want to be the bad guy anymore.
Snow White seems to take the opposite position. It says that our lives are not ours to mold or shape, that there are certain things we must do, and that we have little power in shaping those things. Just look at the first scene of the film. It's one of the most oddly efficient introductions to any Disney movie ever. In the first 10 minutes, we learn every important thing we have to know about the main actors. And the purpose of this scene isn't to build personality, it's to establish a set of roles for the characters to fill. The movie starts with an imbalancing of power. Snow White's mother, the proper queen, is presumably dead, and her father is nowhere to be found. And in the absence of other forms of authority, Snow White is forced into an improper subservient role. She cleans the castle when she should be acting like a princess, finding a hot prince or whatever. But what's important here isn't that Snow White centers on a disruption of roles. I mean, that's an incredibly common thing, and you can see it in everything from Shakespeare to Star Wars. No, what makes Snow White different is that the way this conflict is resolved has nothing to do with who the characters are or what they think. We can see Snow White as a character who starts the film having something she doesn't want and which isn't appropriate for her, and who ends the movie having something she does want and which is appropriate for her. But what allows her to go from the start point to the end point isn't something that comes from her. Instead, it comes from a force that's somehow external to her and which controls her life whether she's aware of it or not. We can see examples of this throughout the movie. When Snow is cast out of the kingdom and the huntsman is tasked with killing her, he fails to do this and shows her mercy. But why does he do this? It's not because she says something or acts a way. It's because she's pretty and he likes that, I guess. This scene is echoed later on with the dwarves. See, they also consider murdering her, but then because she's sleeping and cute, they don't. Again, it's not her that makes people not kill her. It's not a power that she produces or has control over. It's what she is, not who she is, that makes her successful. A really clear example of this occurs at the end of the movie when Snow White dies. Instead of burying her like normal dwarves would, these guys keep her in a glass box so they can look at her. And in the end, the prince kisses her and she's good. Here, it's made obvious that it's not something about Snow White that allows her to survive. I mean, at this point, she's a body, right? She's nothing, but still, forces come together. The dwarves put her in a box, the prince kisses her. Similar to Snow White, the evil stepmother is also subject to forces that are far beyond her control. That's a bit of a strange thing to say, because at first glance, she seems like a bit of a rebel. At the beginning of the movie, the tides are changing. She's not the most beautiful woman in the land anymore, but is she gonna take that? No, she fights against it.
You will kill her.
But your majesty!
But when we look deeper at her character, we can see that although she seems to fight her role, her character arc is totally informed by things that she just isn't aware of. I think the most important example of this is the way that the stepmother tries to kill Snow White. In order to poison her, she puts on the disguise of an ugly old woman. On one hand, we can look at this masking on a literal level. The stepmother conceals herself so that Snow White won't know it's her. Clearly, that's her motivation here. But on the other hand, the stepmother's transformation turns out to be a permanent one. Even though she's not aware of it, she won't ever be beautiful again after this point. And isn't that kind of odd? Here we have a character who wants to be pretty, but she seems to subconsciously make a decision that reinforces her true and proper role. She lowers herself before Snow White and becomes a hag. And just look at the way the poor woman dies. After doing everything right, after successfully killing Snow White and running and winning the day, lightning strikes her and she falls off a cliff, and that's it. Looking at this section, we can see that the stepmother never really had a chance of getting what she wanted, never could have broken from her prescribed role. Just like Snow White, the stepmother lacks the power to change her life in any meaningful way.
What do you do when things go wrong? Oh, you sing a song!
So, if Snow White presents us with characters who can't do anything to affect the quality or the purpose of their lives, what can these characters do? How should they be acting? The answer, the movie tells us, is good manners. The difference between Snow White and the stepmother isn't that one has power over her life and the other doesn't. It's that one acts sweet and has proper etiquette, and the other is rude and mean. Think about all the times in the movie that the audience is made aware of how charming and polite Snow White is. She can beckon animals to do her bidding with nothing but her natural charisma. She can make a dark forest happy through a bright disposition. She won't enter a home without cleaning it, and when it's dinner time, she makes sure everyone washes their hands.
Supper's not quite ready. You'll just have time to wash.
Snow White is a role model, but not in the way we generally think of them. She's not impressive because she does things or has ambitions. She's impressive because she rolls with the punches and treats people well. She doesn't have agency, but she's okay with that. In my analysis so far, I've basically just talked about Snow White and her stepmother. And that feels a bit wrong, because one of the most important aspects of the film is the Seven Dwarves. Aside from these guys, the movie is pretty much just an accurate adaptation of the original fairy tale. So now I'm gonna turn our attention to the dwarves, and it's lucky for us that their presence in the movie is really interesting and really strange. See, where the protagonist and antagonist of the story are characters who neatly occupy their roles, Snow White's the princess, the stepmother's the witch, the Seven Dwarves are harder to pin down. They don't seem to fit any coherent role. When Snow White first meets the dwarves, it seems like they're going to enter a traditional patriarchal family structure. It's the job of these 7 dudes to venture out into the world and gain capital. Meanwhile, it quickly becomes clear that Snow White's role is in the home. She cooks and cleans and generally facilitates a positive environment for the men to come back to. But as the relationship between Snow White and the dwarves progresses, this split between roles becomes sort of amorphous. At different times, the dwarves seem to function as Snow White's father and as her children. Likewise, Snow White functions as a daughter and a mother. I think a good way of understanding the instability of roles in this relationship is to ask the question, who's in charge here? Who has authority over whom? In Snow White's first scene with the dwarves, it seems like the dwarves have all the power. They own the house and they let her stay in exchange for labor.
And if you let me stay, I'll keep house for you.
Moreover, the dwarves frequently put themselves in a paternal role and see Snow White as a child.
So beware the strangers.
Don't worry.
But at times, the power balance seems to go the other way, and Snow White is in charge.
Someday when spring is here,
The day after she meets the dwarves, she is already heading up the household. She makes them dinner and sends them off with cute little lunches. Plus, she has the authority to demand that they wash their hands before they eat, suggesting that they are, in some way, subservient to her. To make their roles even stranger, there seems to be a sort of infantile sexuality underscoring their relationship. All the dwarves fawn over how beautiful Snow White is.
She's mighty pretty.
She's beautiful.
Grumpy claims that she has feminine wiles, though he doesn't know what that means.
She's a female, and all females is poison. They're full of wicked wiles.
And in one of the final scenes, Dopey is obsessed with getting a kiss on the lips from Snow White. So, what do we do with this weird blob of roles and dynamics? Well, this is how I see it. Because Snow White, at the beginning of the movie, is left without paternal figures, she's unable to have a childhood in the proper sense. And that's what her relationship with the dwarves approximates. Here, in the woods, she's able to play with the roles that she'll one day adopt, sort of in the way a child plays house. At times, she's the mother with authority, at times she's the daughter who needs safeguarding. It's chaotic and lacks coherent direction because it's a game, one that instructs her on what it is to be a woman. And when the prince finally awakens her, all that role shifting and weirdness ends. He is the prince, meant to take her and take care of her, and she is the damsel, meant to live and act like a princess. To put it simply, her childhood is over. She's done playing and is ready to take on the mantle of adulthood. Having given it a closer look, I find Snow White really interesting because it seems to position its themes in a way totally unlike any modern Disney movie. After the 90s, Disney was all about characters who obsessed about their purpose in life.
Riff-raff, street rat, I don't buy that. If only they'd look closer.
They're worried that people don't appreciate them for who they are, or that various oppressive forces will stop them from reaching their potential.
Can it be I'm not meant to play this part?
But for Snow White, roles aren't a conscious decision. They aren't a goal to aspire to, or an antagonist to fight against. They exist only in the background of the film, as a set of assumptions, a rulebook that functions through the characters. Snow White is a film about roles. It's about playing with roles and inhabiting roles and embracing the role you were given. But what's strange is that neither the characters nor the film itself seems completely aware of this fact. So that's that video. I was thinking about making this into a bit of a series. I'm really interested in tracking the first 4 Golden Age Disney films. So if you're interested in that, let me know. I'll leave a pinned comment down below or whatever. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.